I'm sorry. I left my wallet at home. I just needed to sit somewhere warm. The old man's voice cracked with embarrassment as he stared down at the empty table. His weathered hands trembled slightly, and his worn coat hung loose on his thin frame. Sloane Mercer paused mid-step, the coffee pot still in her hand. At 28, she'd seen countless customers at Red Bird Diner, but something about this man's quiet dignity pierced through her exhaustion from the double shift. "Hey," she said softly, sliding into the booth across from him. "It's freezing out there. Let me get you some coffee, and maybe some pie, on the house." The man looked up, his pale blue eyes glistening. "I couldn't. I don't take charity." "It's not charity," Sloane said gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just one human being kind to another. That's all." His chin quivered, and he nodded slowly. "Thank you. Thank you so much." What Sloane didn't know was that Declan Shaw, at 64, wasn't a man who'd forgotten his wallet. He was a man testing humanity and searching for something he'd lost long ago. Declan had built Shaw Industries from nothing, a technology empire worth billions. But 3 years ago, his wife of 30 years, Iris, had died suddenly. And in her absence, he'd discovered a devastating truth. He'd been surrounded by people who loved his money, not him. His children visited only when they needed funding for their ventures. His friends were business associates. His social circle consisted of people angling for investments. After Iris's funeral, the loneliness had become unbearable. So Declan had begun a quiet experiment. He'd dress in old clothes from his college days, leave his luxury car blocks away, and visit diners, parks, shops, testing whether anyone would show kindness to an ordinary old man with nothing to offer. For 6 months, he'd been ignored, dismissed, or treated with impatience, until today, until Sloane. He watched as she returned with fresh coffee, apple pie still warm from the oven, and that same gentle smile. She didn't hover or make him feel pitied. She simply treated him like he mattered. "Rough day?" she asked, refilling his cup. "Rough few years," Declan admitted quietly. "I lost my wife, and I've been trying to figure out who I am without her." Sloane's expression softened with understanding, not pity. "I lost my mom 2 years ago. I know that emptiness. Like you're just going through the motions, waiting to feel real again." Declan stared at her, stunned by her honesty. "Yes, exactly that." They talked for 20 minutes, about grief, about feeling invisible, about the small moments that keep you going. Sloane shared how she worked double shifts to save for nursing school, how her mother had been her best friend, how some days the only thing that felt meaningful was making someone else's day a little bit brighter. When she finally had to return to other tables, Declan sat in wonder. This young woman, struggling herself, had given him something no amount of money could buy: genuine human connection. Declan returned the next day, and the next, always in his old coat, always ordering just coffee. Sloane would sit with him during slow moments, and gradually a friendship formed. She told him about her dreams, opening a community center someday where struggling families could get meals, support, hope. He told her about his wife, how Iris had volunteered at shelters, how she'd believed wealth meant nothing if you didn't use it to lift others. "She sounds like she was extraordinary," Sloane said one rainy afternoon. "She was," Declan whispered, his voice thick. "And I failed her. I got so caught up in building the empire that I forgot why we started. She wanted to change lives, and I just wanted to win." Sloane reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Then honor her now. It's never too late to become who you wished you'd been." Those words shattered something in Declan's chest. This waitress, who barely knew him, had offered more wisdom than his therapist, his advisors, his own children. 3 months into their friendship, Sloane's life crumbled. Her landlord sold the building, and she couldn't afford the rent increase. She'd have to drop out of school and move 2 hours away to live with her aunt. She told Declan through tears during her last shift at the diner. "I'm sorry. I won't be able to visit anymore. I'm gonna miss our talks." Declan felt panic rise in his chest. He'd found something precious, someone who saw him, truly saw him, and he was about to lose it. Not because of death this time, but because of something he could fix. But he couldn't just throw money at her. That would shatter the authenticity of everything they'd built. "Sloane," he said carefully, his voice shaking, "before you go, there's something I need to tell you." He told her everything. Who he really was, why he'd come to the diner, how she'd restored his faith in humanity. Sloane sat frozen, her face pale. "You've been testing me?" "No," Declan said urgently. "I was testing the world. And you were the only one who passed without even knowing there was a test. You were kind because that's who you are." "I don't understand why you're telling me this now," she whispered. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "I'm starting a foundation, in Iris's name, to fund exactly the kind of community center you described, and I need someone to run it. Someone who understands what it means to struggle, to care, to show up for people, even when you're barely holding on yourself." Sloane's hands shook as she picked up the card. "Mr. Shaw, I'm not qualified." "You're the most qualified person I've ever met," Declan interrupted, his eyes bright with tears. "You have what can't be taught, a generous heart. The rest we can figure out together." She stared at him, overwhelmed. Why would you do this for me?" "Because you did something far greater for me," Declan said, his voice breaking. "You paid for an old man's coffee when he needed it most. You sat with him. You listened. You reminded him that kindness still exists and that life is still worth living." 18 months later, the Iris Shaw Community Center opened its doors. Sloane stood at the entrance, greeting families, serving meals, offering hope. She'd completed her nursing degree through the Foundation Scholarship Program, and now split her time between healthcare and community service. Declan visited every week, no longer in disguise, but genuinely present, finally living the life Iris had dreamed for them both. One afternoon, as they watched children playing in the center's courtyard, Sloane turned to him. "You know what I realized? That day at the diner, you weren't the only one being saved." Declan looked at her curiously. "I was drowning in my own loneliness, working those shifts, wondering if anything I did mattered. And then you walked in and reminded me that sometimes the smallest kindness creates the biggest change." Declan smiled through his tears. "My wife used to say, we're all just walking each other home. I finally understand what she meant." "She'd be so proud of you," Sloane whispered. "She'd be proud of us," Declan corrected. "This is what happens when two broken people choose kindness over isolation." As the sun set over the center, over the lives being changed, the hope being restored, Declan thought back to that cold morning when he'd walked into Redbird Diner with nothing but despair. And he remembered Sloane's words, the ones that had started everything.
It's just one human being kind to another. That's all. Sometimes that's everything. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, subscribe, and comment.